Hello, boys and girls, it's Mrs. Sada, and I'm back with my friend Appleblossom to read you some more Appleblossom the Possum by Holly Goldberg Sloan. Yesterday we left off at the end of chapter 12, and Appleblossom, Antonio, and Amlet are still really working hard to be able to stay together after they hunt all night, but it keeps getting trickier and trickier for them. They ran into the brown snake in the drain pipe and got chased out and ended up having to sleep in a tire together. So we're going to continue on to chapter 13 to see what other kinds of adventures Appleblossom is going to go on, and basically the kind of things that she's going to go through as her and her brothers continue to grow up. Chapter 13. After 12 hours of rest, the three opossums wake up to the splendor of a new dark night. They make a plan to meet by a gopher hole under an oleander shrub. Then they separate to seek fortune, which means to find good breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Appleblossom keeps her long nose to the ground as she hunts for tasty pill bugs and earwigs and beetle grubs. She uses her hands and feet to pull up weeds and lift stones. She surprises herself an hour later when she realizes she's somehow in the grassy yard where the dog lives with the little pebbled-eyed people. She knows that she should be afraid, but she can see the red ball in the shadows of the grass, and that means that the dog is inside. In the dark, she can see the house more clearly. The lights are on, and she makes out two very large monsters who are staring at a magic light box on the wall. Then the small people comes into the room. She doesn't look at the box. She turns and stares out the dark see-through glass. Appleblossom doesn't dare move. What if the littlest monster screams and shouts and alerts the big people? What if the dog finds out she's in his yard? Appleblossom holds her breath, and the little creature walks closer to the glass. And then the monster does the craziest thing. She raises her hand and she waves. Appleblossom pulls herself up onto her hind legs so she's standing tall, and she raises her front paw and waves back. Can you see her wave? Appleblossom can see that the little people is very happy. She's now smiling and laughing, and the two monsters staring at the little box turn to see what's going on. This scares Appleblossom, and she drops to the ground and takes off for the cover of the bushes. She runs until she's out of breath, but when she finally stops running, she is happy too. She likes the little people. They both appreciate flowers. At the end of the night, Appleblossom meets up with Antonio and Amlet, and they find an excellent sleeping spot inside a cinder block wall. This is a dry and very comfortable place to call home, at least for a few nights. Once they are happily in the cozy den, Appleblossom clears her throat and says, "Tonight was special." Amlet yawns, but Antonio looks interested when he asks, "Did you eat a frog?" Before Appleblossom can answer, Amlet says, "I love frogs, especially the legs. Were you down in the big drain pipe? I hear lots of frogs croaking in that gully." Appleblossom shakes her head. "No, I didn't eat frogs." Amlet is disappointed. "Too bad." Appleblossom struggles to find the right words. I can imagine she's pretty nervous about telling them about the monster. See how she handles this. "I made a friend," she managed. Amlet rolls over and mutters, "Who needs friends?" But Antonio is intrigued. "Mama said not to talk to the skunks. Did you cozy up to one of those striped stinkers?" Appleblossom shakes her head. "No." Amlet yawns, this time in a way that sounds too big and like he's making some kind of point that he doesn't care. "So, just tell us," he says. "The sun's coming up and we need to get to sleep. Who's your new pal?" Appleblossom inhales deep and then exhales slowly. "I think I found a special monster." Amlet sits up fast, bangs his head on the cement block, and yelps with pain. "What?" Antonio is even more alarmed. Why would you find a monster? Appleblossom realizes that her big news is going over big, but not in a good way. She stammers, I didn't mean to. One thing led to another. Her two brothers are no longer consumed with fatigue. They look consumed with concern. Appleblossom can hear it in Antonio's voice when he says, "What were you even doing around monsters?" "I went back to the same yard where I spent the day. There are good things to eat over there. I found worms and flies and snails and even a dead mouse. I think an owl dropped him." Amlet is easily distracted. "How was the dead mouse? Tasty, I bet." Appleblossom manages to nod. "Yes, a bit chewy, but very nice." Antonio isn't going to be sidetracked by dinner discussion. "I don't care if there were a dozen dead mice. You shouldn't be spying on monsters." The hair on Appleblossom's back stands up. "I wasn't spying." Amlet's voice now sounds like a growl. "This will lead to nothing but trouble." Appleblossom tries to hold her ground. "I was thinking that both of you might want to come with me and see her, up close, but very safe." Antonio answers before Amlet can. "Why would we want to do that?" "Research," she says in a low voice. Amlet makes a face. "What's research?" Appleblossom pulls her tail close to her chest and ends the conversation. "Forget about it. Good day. Sleep away." The little possum shuts her eyes and hopes the discussion is over. Antonio tries to explain what research is to Amlet. Amlet moans for a while about having a headache. Antonio keeps talking about safety, but both of the Possum brothers are asleep long before Appleblossom drifts off. She knows she's made a mistake telling them about the monster. She doesn't want to have secrets, but maybe that is part of growing up. Some things, she decided, might be better not shared. So that was the end of chapter 13. What do you think? Do you think she made a mistake telling them about the monster? Or do you think maybe her brothers are giving her good advice and she needs to listen? I don't know. She's starting to have to make big choices. Let's go right into chapter 14 and find out. It is late when Appleblossom opens her eyes the next night. She has slept in. Amlet is cleaning his whiskers and Antonio is grooming his ears. She hopes they have forgotten about the harsh words of the night before, and she tries to sound cheerful when she says, "I hear the wind. That means fallen berries on the ground." Antonio shoots a look at Amlet and then gets right to the point. "Amlet and I were talking while you were asleep. We don't want you spending time around people." Appleblossom tries not to sound angry. "I'm glad that you're worried about me, but you don't need to be." Antonio stops cleaning his ears and sighs. "We do when you exercise poor judgment." Amlet looks confused. "What does exercising have to do with this?" Antonio pulls Amlet's tail. It brings him right back into line, and he tells his sister, What we were saying is important. You need to listen." "Why does it feel like you're ganging up on me?" she answers. Antonio's voice is firm. "We're looking out for you. That's different." Appleblossom crosses her arms and holds them against her chest. "You're not the boss of me." Amlet snorts through his nose. It sounds mean. "Don't laugh at me, Amlet." He turned his deep chuckle into a cough. I was clearing my throat of a hairball. I've been grooming." Appleblossom flattens her ears against her skull. "Likely story." With that, she squeezes past the two possums and heads on into the dark as she says, "I guess I understand why we're considered solitary animals." She hurries away from the wall, not giving them a chance to answer. She wants to get as far away from Amlet and Antonio as she can. They don't understand her. Appleblossom continues running, and she doesn't look over her shoulder, but if she did, she would see that her brothers are following her, and if her feelings weren't so hurt, she would hear their rapid footsteps. Instead, she mutters to herself, "I don't care what they think." It doesn't take long for Appleblossom to reach the monster's house. She sees the red ball is resting in the grass, and the house is dark, so she figures all of the monsters must be asleep. She heads for the ivy-covered drain pipe and runs along the side of the house, and she starts to climb. Appleblossom's brothers huddle together as they watch her reach the top of the pipe and then disappear from view. Antonio shakes his fist in frustration. She doesn't listen to a word we say. At his side, Amulet is equally upset. If she's trying to act like a rebel, she's succeeding. Rebels need a cause, Antonio muttered. Amulet added, and she never even liked acting. She wants to just be herself. Antonio looks up the drain pipe. Well, maybe this is the real Appleblossom and the other Appleblossom was just acting. He takes a moment to consider. That's the problem with being the actors of the animal world. How are we supposed to know what's genuine and what isn't? He takes hold of the vines that grip the drain pipe. We have no choice but to follow her. Amulet nods in agreement. No choice. With Amulet right behind him, Antonio works his way up the side of the house. He moves very quietly. When he reaches the roof, he peers over the lip of the gutter and sees his sister. She is sitting on the edge of the chimney, staring up at the stars. Into the pin drop quiet, Antonio calls out, "What are you doing up here?" His voice startles Appleblossom. She is perched precariously on the edge of the chimney, and Antonio and Amulet can only watch helplessly as she jolts back, her feet finding nothing but air. They run to the brick smokestack, but it is too late. Appleblossom has disappeared into the darkness. Oh my goodness. I wonder where she went, and I wonder if she's going to be okay. Antonio and Amulet stand for a long moment in total shock, and then they fall into each other's arms. What has happened is not the fault of the stars, but it might be the fault of the Possum brothers. So they were trying to protect her, and it may have ultimately made it so that she is going to be hurt. We'll have to read tomorrow, chapter 15, to find out what happened to Appleblossom. Miss you, boys and girls. I'll talk to you later. Bye.